Welcome to another thrilling episode of the Inalienable Right Guys. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and that they're endowed with certain inalienable rights by
the thing.
We dub this the Texas two-step. We done one video earlier about the Texit, and I got my friend and cohort here to really lay down some Texas facts and why we feel strongly about the way we feel here in Texas and how much we love Texas. And it's because we know it's mighty reckless to mess with Texas. So we got a way of living down here we believe is simple, and it's straight to the facts, and it's honest, and it's worth preserving. So Mr. Mark here got some facts that he want to lay on you and just to bring to the public's attention and see what y'all think about it. We are not here to try to sell nobody nothing, anything of the sort. We're just here as great Texans, loving our Texas state, loving everything about it, our food, our culture, our camaraderie, our land, our resources. So with that said, I'm going to give it over to Big Tex.
I don't know, I'm a hell of a lot smaller than you are, so I'm not Big Tex, but anyway, no, we did a video on Texit here, a month or so ago. It was something that was, brought to our attention. Like I said, it's something that I have known about for a few years, and got a lot of traction, got a lot of people talking about it. For us, we're still a pretty small channel, but so we do know now that there is a bill that is going to be put forth. I don't think I have the name of it up here, but so this November, Texans will be able to go to polls and vote. Basically, I think it's a Texas Referendum, Texas Nationalist Referendum Act or something like that. Should have wrote it down. Anyway, but basically it's a vote for people here in Texas to see if they want to, have Texas become its own country again. And so we mentioned that, in our last video, but yeah, they've actually got it where it's going to be on a ballot in November. And, and basically what it does is if the Texas people vote for it, then it basically makes it so that the legislature in Texas can go ahead and start talking about, all the things that need to take place for Texas to secede from the U.S. So I've got an article up here. This is on the Texas Nationalist Movement website, and if you can see it back here, it's TNM. So Tango November Mike .me. I don't know what ME stands for. That's interesting. But anyway, TNM.me is the Texas Nationalist Movement website. And so there's an article that was brought up on their site. And so I'm just going to, basically read from that article. And it basically brings up some of the issues that people are concerned about. So I'm just going to go ahead and read through this. It says, it's true that Texas is highly integrated with the United States. However, these political and economic ties are not so tight or intricately interwoven that it would be impossible to untangle them. In many instances, it would not be necessary to untangle them at all. There is no part of the relationship between Texas and the rest of the United States that could not be accomplished by utilizing existing state-level institutions and agencies, executing bilateral agreements between Texas and the United States, or by Texas signing on to multilateral international agreements that are already in place. I do think that, we are supposed to be, there was a big debate when our nation was founded between the roles of the federal government and the roles of the state. And I think we mentioned before, some of these things that have come across from the federal government in recent years are really overstepping its bounds. a lot of things that have come up should be states' rights issues, and they've become federal issues, where really the states, in the understanding of our founding fathers, the states were supposed to be able to pretty much run themselves and do their own thing with, limited, federal government influence and interference. So I think a lot of that is, what I just read there, that's kind of the thing. The state should be able to do a lot of these things already, but going ahead and becoming our own country it's not that far off from things that we should technically be able to do now. Anyway, so we'll go ahead and read on. It says, first question that comes up, it said, is this a trade issue? Is the issue trade? And it says, countries including the United States trade with one another every hour of every day and have done so for all of recorded human history. The free trade agreements that the United States already has in place for 20 other countries around the world treat trade with them as though they were one of the states of the Union. Yet no one would argue that any of those countries are inseparable members of the federal union. Texas could execute a free trade agreement with the United States and adopt the United States tariff schedule with the World Trade Organization or external trade, and no one would even notice a difference. And that's true. I mean, we should be able to make trade with other countries just like they all do.
Well, let me ask a question. Is the issue currency?
Well, that's the next thing on the list.
Okay.
So what it says here, and I'm just going to paraphrase, I don't have to read all this. We could adopt whatever currency we wanted to, A lot of countries have adopted, our money, United States, currency, as their own. And so, we're already using it. We can just adopt it as our own currency. And, and if some future time, like I said, we said in our last video, I know that we already have a gold reserve. If we wanted to go on some kind of gold reserve currency, we could do that. I'm sure. Whatever we could. Eventually. I mean, look how they did with Europe, and all the monetary systems over there going to the euro. Mm-hmm. And I think in some of those countries, both whatever currency they used and the euro are still viable. They trade back and forth. That's got to be crazy. I would think it would be kind of a little confusing, but I think in some of those countries they do that. But anyway, yeah, they went over to the euro. A lot of those went over to the euro. They phased out their own currency, whatever, went over to the euro. So that shouldn't be an issue.
Okay. That answers my question.
Next is banking an issue. Foreign banks are allowed to operate in the United States. So that includes retail banks like Compass and HSBC. And it says more banks in Texas are state chartered and state regulated than those that are federally chartered. So most of our banks are state banks anyway. So that shouldn't be an issue. This is a big one. The next one, by the way, I've watched a couple of videos here recently. Daniel Miller is the guy that I guess founded Texas Nationalist Movement. I want to say back in the early 90s. And I watched a couple of videos recently, him talking about this. And he said this is one of the biggest ones that he gets, that people want to ask about, is like Social Security. What's going to happen with your Social Security, those type of things, other federal pension benefits. Well, if you think about it, and this was his answer, if you think about it, there's people that have moved out of the country. If you wanted to move to Belize or you wanted to move to France or whatever, you can still get your Social Security. The federal government has, the American federal government has laws in place where if you're, wherever you are, you can get your money. So that's not going to change either. Mm-hmm. He also said that Texas would probably, have its own Social Security, and that it would probably be an opt-in, which is fine with me. Personally, I think Social Security was a mistake. And a lot of people, there's a lot of people out there mad because, I know that they said years ago, that by the time I reached 65, Social Security was going to be gone, you know. And, you know, these politicians have borrowed from it and done all this stuff with it. And, you know, I don't see what the point is. I think there should be ways that, first of all, I think that one of the things that we should teach our children, and I'm telling you, I'm no smarter about it than rocks out there. I really not. But I'm hoping, I'm actually learning some stuff. We've got a mutual friend that is doing some financial stuff, and I've been talking to him, and I'm trying to learn some stuff so that, you know, I can teach my children how to do the right thing, save money, and all this, so that when they get old enough to retire, they're going to be fine. Because it's things that I really wasn't taught. You know, years ago, you know, you worked for a company, and you know your pension was tied with that company or whatever. When you retired, you got money from that company, and so much of that has changed. Now we have these 401ks and IRAs and all this other stuff. And I'm no financial person at all. But I just have always felt like that us handing that money to the federal government, you know, to do with whatever they want, you know, whatever, and they're supposed to be giving it back to us. They've already said that it's, you know, it's disappearing, or there's not enough of it there or whatever. I just feel like I understand those that say it's my money, and it is. And, you know, and I want it. When I retire, I want my money, and I understand that. But I feel like we should teach our children. We should teach kids when they get out, and teach them in college, whatever, to learn how to put money aside for your retirement and make it not tied to your job. So many things that we have that get tied to our health care and stuff. All gets tied to what, you know, our jobs and what we're working. So many of these things need to be released from that environment, so that you know, we can do it ourselves. Because I think we can. You know, it should be my inalienable rights, right? It should be my right to be able to take my money and do what I want with it in order to secure my retirement. And there are ways of doing that. And like I said, I'm learning a little bit about that now when I'm talking with this friend of ours that I didn't know before. And I think, you know, we should teach people how to do these things. You know, build generational wealth and whatnot. That's one of the things that he talks about. And so that's kind of my thinking on Social Security. It ought to be an opt-in. I mean, even our, you know, no matter what happens with this, in our current situation, it needs to be an opt-in.
Well, let me read the next question. But it's good that, you know, Mark has brought that to us, that about Social Security and how will this work in Texas, and you know, from the federal to the state. But you know, and Texas being its own country, so it kind of dovetail into this next question is about travel. The issue of travel. You know, because I always had the idea, you know, say if I'm in another country, I got to get passports. Say even just the next state over, you know, Oklahoma, or we'd be our own country, so we would, in order to leave, we'd go to any of the 49 states where we would have to have passports and the likes.
No. The way I understand it, you can kind of, you know, I mean, me and my wife were going to do this one time, and we never did make it, but we went down to South Texas, and we was going to go across the border into Mexico, whatever, just a day trip, you know, just for the heck of it. And something happened, we didn't end up going. But, you know, people do that every day. And so there's it's like a border crossing card, something like that, that you can get so you can go back and forth. And people do that to work. One of the YouTubers I watched, he's actually from Tijuana, and I know he comes back and forth all the time. So I think there's already something set in place for that, and I don't think it would change. One of the things I want to mention, and we mentioned this before, is that, you know, if Texas does secede and become its own country again, there's a lot of these others around here. I know some of the comments we saw on our video, people from Oklahoma and Louisiana, and they're like, take us with you, or whatever. And Daniel Miller, when I was watching one of his videos, said that a lot of these other states, they have the same type of thing in play where, all they have to do is sit down with their legislatures and say, okay, this is what we want to do, and have the people vote on it, just like what's coming up in November, and they can do the same thing. So now whether they would end up going with Texas or just doing their own thing, who knows? But there's that aspect of it too. What if we did, and then Oklahoma and some of these others, whether they joined us or they became their own, I really don't think it'd be, that's going to be an issue as far as traveling. I mean, people travel all over the world. I think traveling is not going to be a problem. And as far as, like I said, I don't think the passport thing is going to be, a big issue either. So the next one on here involves, the functions of our government, funding the government and all that. There's another article, and I was trying to get that one. I think I printed it off and I left it on the printer at the house. But we actually fund the government. Texas gives more funding to the federal government than we take back from the federal government. We actually send more money to the United States government than we get money in return for whatever programs and everything. So we overfund the American government. So if we're not having to send our money to the federal government anymore, we got all that money for ourselves, we can fund a lot of these, things. Let me see if it says, Texans, it says, currently pay in all federal and state taxes $336 billion per year. That money would be the total revenue readily available to an independent Texas without increasing the financial burden on Texans. In other words, we already, as Texans, we already pay $336 billion per year, which would be more than enough to handle our business here in Texas without us paying a cent more than we already do. So that's pretty straightforward. It says this level of government revenue would rank Texas as 12th in the world for government revenue collected.
That's huge.
Let's see. This next part talks about how Texas stacks up against other self-governing countries in the world. This is how Texas stacks up against other nation states. So Texas, by itself, has the 10th largest economy in the world, ranks 40th in the world in size, ranks 47th in the world in population, 40th in the world in the size of its labor force. Its net global exporter ranking is 22, leading all other states in the United States. 93% of Texas exports are manufactured exports. 12th largest technology exporter in the world. 19th in the world in farms and ranches, size of farms and active farms and ranches. Texas is the largest energy producer in the United States. We have 26 petroleum refineries. 7th largest coal reserves. 6th largest producers of wind energy in the world. And we have our own power grid, which we mentioned in our last video. So we've already got economically, and we know with so many of these big businesses and stuff that have moved their headquarters to Texas, most recently, Elon Musk moving SpaceX and Tesla to Texas. And that's just one example of, huge company that has moved to Texas. So we know that that our tax base and our ability to produce goods and services, it's pretty high up there. All right, so here's another one that I know that you brought up was about Texas having its own military. So the Texas Military Department is composed of 3 branches of the military in the state of Texas. These branches are Texas Army National Guard, Texas Air National Guard, and Texas State Guard. All 3 branches are administered by the state adjutant general, an appointee of the governor of Texas, and fall under the command of the Texas governor. So we already have a military basically in place. State Guard, which is exclusively under the command of the governor, is divided into 6 Army regiments, 2 air wings, 3 maritime regiments, and 3 medical battalions. Texas Army National Guard consists of the 36th Infantry Division, 71st Troop Command, and 176th Engineering Brigade. Texas Air National Guard consists of the 149th Fighter Wing, 147th Attack Wing, and 136th Airlift Wing. So, then it goes on to say, contrary to the opinion of some, Texas' attachment to the federal system is not a special case. There was no union in recent history with more power aggregated into a central government than the Soviet Union. With an even tighter integration and under extreme economic stress, its constituent republics were able to extract themselves and become fully functioning nation states. So what they're talking about is like all the countries, the Iron Curtain, Hungary, Poland, Czechoslovakia, now the Czech Republic and Slovakia, Yugoslavia, Ukraine, all those countries, Georgia, anyway, all those countries that were once all part of the Soviet bloc are now, free and they're their own autonomous countries. So it's basically saying that, we'd be doing the same thing. And it ends up saying, given all these advantages, all the things we have, all of our infrastructure and everything that we've got in place, everything that's already in place, it says if Texas can't make it as an independent nation, then who can? And I believe that. I believe Texans can do it.
And I thank Mark for this information that we put down, because like the average Texan is not privy to this, so this is a necessary announcement, a public announcement. That once we understand these things, then we can possibly be at ease with thinking that we just doing something to being out on a limb. But Texas is self-sufficient, is independent, and it's wealthy and valuable in a lot of ways. That a great asset to the United States. So. Yeah. And so Texas is actually becoming more and more, like Mark said, more and more people are listening and getting interested in this concept. So, and this, to me, one of the most effective ways to do it, what you just did then, and is that to give out these facts that just many Texans don't have a clue.
Right. And like I said, I hope I'm not stepping on any toes with the Texas Nationalist Movement and Daniel Miller. Like I said, this is just basically what's on their site. I just kind of read some of the stuff that's on there, and what they have to say. Like I said, for all those that are interested, they can go and look for themselves and just see what's there, see what they're talking about. I'm sure there's more information. There's a link on this article here to says read more facts about Texit. So so there's a lot of stuff. If you want to dig into it and see, there's a lot of stuff there. Like I said, when we first started talking about this, I'm just interested to see if the people of Texas want to vote for it and what we do from there. It could be it could be really interesting. So many of the so much of the stuff that we've talked in our previous videos that we will be going through, putting out here in the next few days or whatever. We're talking about all the corruption and stuff that's been going on. In the federal government, the swamp and all that, and we've talked before about Texit and how we just have our own thing, and we just I'm interested to see what the people of Texas think about it. So we'll see what happens. just figured we'd, provide some information. I know, like I said, we got pretty good traction on the other video that we did, and so I just thought we'd provide some more information and link to the Texas Nationalist Movement, and you guys can go check it out. See what you think.
All right, it was definitely thorough.